Thank you everyone for joining us here today for deductions versus compliance fines. We are, this is a topic that we get a lot of questions about. You know, what is the difference, especially how can I recover money for them? So really excited to dive into this today. You have myself, I'm Melody. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Supply Pike. I'll be acting as your host. So as questions come in, I'll be pitching them to Stacy, who she is our resident expert. So she's our VP of Retail Insights here at Supply Pike. She has over a decade's worth of experience in the supplier world, has worked on both sides of the table, broker, supplier, she's now in software. It's great. We're super lucky to have her. So today we're going to be just doing a brief overview of the topic. So what is deductions? What are compliance fines? We're going to be talking about how you can actually go and dispute Walmart AP deductions, how you can dispute OTIF fines, how you can dispute SQEP. And I guess that's one thing that I need to say at the top of this. This is a very Walmart heavy webinar. So you will be seeing a lot of Walmart examples in here. And just to clarify that, and then we'll actually give some examples of how you can go and dispute. And then at the end, we're going to be doing a quick Q&A. We will be taking questions throughout, so feel free to get your questions early, but we will have about 10 minutes reserved at the end to make sure that we can cover any other questions that you may have. And then at the end, if you want to stay on and learn more about Supply Pike, learn more about our products, how we can help you, we will be after 12 doing a quick little 5-minute product preview of our OTIF Radar product. So you can get a little sneak peek of what that looks like. And then if you're curious, you can book some time to do a demo with your data. So awesome. Some FAQs. So will you get a copy of the slide deck? Yes, you will. We will be sending the slide deck with the recording in your inbox in 3 to 4 business days. The same email that you signed up for this webinar in, you will get that in your inbox. What is the best way to ask the question? So we have no one in the chat yet, but you can feel free to use the chat, which is just a singular bubble that says chat at the bottom, in order to engage with us. So, like putting your favorite book or the book that you're reading currently, please put that in the chat so we can see it. But if you have a question, if you can put it in the Q&A tab, so it's going to be the two bubbles that says Q&A. That just makes it a lot easier for me to see them and make sure that we're answering everything. So please use that, but also engage in the chat because it's always fun. Okay, who is Supply Pike? This is where I hand it off to you, Stacy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melody. And just wanted to echo Mel and saying thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us today on this Thursday morning. I'm glad it's not raining anymore in Northwest Arkansas, so that's really nice. But yeah, really excited to get into deductions and compliance fines with you guys. But if you've not been to a Supply Pike webinar before, we always like to give a really quick introduction so you know who you are hearing from, that we're not crazy people. Okay, we're a little crazy, but hopefully we're educational and crazy. But yeah, so we are Supply Pike. We're a Northwest Arkansas based software company. And essentially kind of our bread and butter is we create cloud-based tools or applications to help our CPGs really focus in on reducing revenue loss. So anywhere that you are kind of losing revenue in your supply chain, be it from deductions or OTIF fines or SQEP fines, we help to kind of identify that and also help you to automatically dispute those and get that money back. So we're really, really proud to say that we work with over 400 different companies today, representing over $25 billion in retail impact. And we work with companies across just about every category in the box. So grocery, gen merch, consumables, we kind of do it all, which is really fun. You guys are going to see at the bottom of the screen some of the brands that we are proud to consider part of the Supply Pike family. And I say this every time. If you guys aren't working with us today, hopefully we'll get the opportunity to work with you soon. And we can add you guys to the Supply Pike family as well. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hop into kind of a brief overview of the difference between deductions and compliance. One of the reasons why we kind of like to level set is because a lot of folks, you just see it as revenue loss, but there are different buckets of revenue loss. There are different ways for you to kind of look at it. And when you understand the different buckets that each kind of category falls into, you can also understand the different ways to go after all of these types of revenue loss. So really quickly, finally, within the world of Walmart, essentially they kind of fall into two big pieces. So one of them is deductions, and that's really going to be focused on AP or accounts payable deductions. And the best way to think about this is basically if you, Walmart orders 100 cases from you, you invoice them for 100 cases. Walmart does not pay that invoice in full for insert reason here because it's Walmart. Essentially, if you're short paid on an invoice, that is really kind of an AP related deduction. Now, the other side of that is the compliance fine. So essentially, that is more on the AR side. So Walmart will actually invoice you, the supplier, for, basically to pay them for a fine that they feel that you are not in compliance with their programs. So things like OTIF, on time in full program, SQEP program, even the collect pickup program, which is kind of brand new for them. Those are considered AR compliance fines because they won't short pay you on an invoice to start. They'll invoice you and fine you. And why sometimes this can be a little bit of there can be some confusion is because if you don't actually pay that invoiced fine that Walmart sends to you, what they do is they end up deducting it off of a future check anyway. So it kind of looks like a deduction, but actually it's an AR fine that they weren't able to, recover from you. And so they short pay you on a future check. So kind of the, TLDR for this is a deduction is they're taking money away from an invoice or payment that they should be sending to you. And a compliance fine is essentially an added thing. So you'll get that invoice from Walmart, and then that's how you know that it's a compliance related fine. So you can see, as I kind of talked about briefly, where it looks like if you're looking at APIS, which is one of the apps, the finance apps in Walmart's retail link, and you're kind of curious, like, okay, how do I know if it's a deduction? How do I know if it's a compliance fine? You'll see generally deductions, you're going to have these four main buckets. So allowance code, so that's going to be stuff that you agree to with Walmart off of your supplier agreement. So things like defective allowances, warehouse allowances, and things like that. Pricing related codes. So, Walmart thinks you should have invoiced them at a certain dollar. You think that you should have invoiced them at a certain dollar. If there's any discrepancy there, they can hit you with the deduction on that. Merchandise level codes, so things like returns, and then shipping codes. So if there are shortage related issues, for example, Walmart ordered 100, you think you shipped 100, Walmart thinks they only received 50 or 75, whatever it is, they're not going to pay you in full for that. That's going to fall under the deduction. And then again, compliance fines are going to be programs like OTIF and SQEP. And essentially, a good way to think about it is there are programs where Walmart has kind of set arbitrary rules for them. So they'll say, hey, for OTIF, for example, if you're not 98% on time, 98% in full, we're going to hit you with a 3% cost of goods sold fine. And then that's how you know that it's going to be more on the compliance side and less on the deduction side. So yeah, just so you guys know, kind of recapping everything that I've talked about, basically the key things to remember are AP deductions are going to come off the check. So again, you invoice Walmart for a certain amount, they won't pay you in full. So that's a deduction. There are situations where you have invalid deductions, and we're going to get, really deep into that today. But essentially, let's just use a shortage example. Walmart says, oh, I only received 75 out of the 100 cases I ordered. But if you have proof that, hey, we really did ship the 100, either a proof of delivery or a bill of lading, you can dispute that and actually win that back. And so for AP deductions in particular, you're going to dispute it in a program called APDP, which is Walmart's accounts payable dispute portal. And we have a lot of great free content on the entire AP deduction process on Supplier Wiki. So, we're going to cover a lot today. So if you want kind of more in-depth information, you can always go to Supplier Wiki and either watch those webinars or read those articles. So just want to let you guys know it's all available there. And then again, kind of flip side of the coin, compliance fines are, again, Walmart is going to invoice you, but then if you don't pay that invoice, then they're going to take that and deduct it off of a future check. So it looks like a deduction, but again, it actually is a compliance fine. SQEP fines are really around packaging and labeling and PO compliance. So just to give you guys some context, Walmart is really trying to automate the DC receiving process within their own supply chains. And what that means is, they want, for example, when things get offloaded off of trucks, you don't really have to have a human there to kind of scan every box. It can go through, automated systems. So with that, they need to make sure that the boxes are of a certain quality, the pallets are of a certain quality, the labels are in the right place and have the right information on them. And so they're kind of trying to find suppliers into compliance for SQEP. OTIF, many of you guys know, has been around for a while. Essentially on time in full. Walmart orders 100 cases to arrive next Wednesday. They want to make sure that 100 cases arrive next Wednesday. And so, if you're not giving them, the number of cases they expect when they expect it, you can get hit with a 3% fine for that. One thing I think to kind of call out and know for SQEP and OTIF fines is that these can actually stack, and they can even stack on top of a deduction. And a lot of folks don't realize that. They're like, oh, if I get an OTIF fine, I'm good on deductions, or I'm good on SQEP or SQEP. You can get hit with 3 different, like a deduction, OTIF fine, and SQEP fine on a single PO. And I think the scary part is that even if, let's say, you were to dispute a deduction and get it paid back, and Walmart's like, yeah, you're right, our bad. We really should have paid you in full for this. You still have to dispute the OTIF fine and the SQEP fine separately for that same PO. So these 3 programs fall under 3 different kind of silos within Walmart. So just disputing and winning one of them does not mean that you will win them all. So it's, again, really important to understand the distinction between the 3. So, number 1, what fines are you getting? Number 2, are they valid fines or not? And number 3, if they're invalid fines, you understand kind of the different types of recourse that you have for each of these different programs. So one thing to call out that's a little bit different for compliance fines. So again, with deductions, you're going to go through APDP. With compliance fines, these are disputed in high radius, and high radius is actually a third-party application that you will need to get access to. We can send you information on how to get an account if you don't already have that. Some compliance fines you can even dispute with your buyer. For example, OTIF, kind of unclear there, but again, we'll talk about that further along in the webinar.
Hey, Stacey, we do have a couple of questions that I wanted to tackle early on, since we have a couple of them. So one of them was, when you submit a dispute in SupplyPike, does it feed into APDP and Retail Link? And it does. Do you want to elaborate on that, Stacey?
Absolutely. That is a great question. So yes, Deductions Navigator, which is our deductions portal, and OTIF Radar, which is our OTIF and compliance portal, we actually have direct integrations into Retail Link. So when you submit something through SupplyPike, that is automatically going to get pushed through to the right system for you. So you don't need to kind of go and double dispute or anything like that. Kind of the beauty of what we do is that we're aggregating all the proof for you. And kind of submitting a single packet so that you're not having to kind of get information from 6 different places to try and fight that dispute. So yes, it does get automatically pushed into APDP for an AP deduction and into high radius for compliance fines. Great question.
We'll do a little, again, demo at the end of this. SupplyPike is not Walmart. I do want to just clarify that, because that's something we get a lot of questions about, but we do help with your Walmart deductions and compliance fines. I see 2 questions actually. Can SupplyPike dispute compliance fines? And does Deduction Navigator include compliance fines? So we do have a separate product that is called OTIF Radar, which does help you go and dispute compliance fines. We are actually launching our SQEP solution today. We have a webinar after lunch. We call them fast pitches, where you can be one of the first people to actually see how we can help you dispute SQEP fines as well. So I will send a link to that fast pitch. Please feel free to jump on that after lunch. It's at 1 p.m. Central Time. Would love to show you kind of how we help with SQEP fines, but if you're interested in seeing how we help with OTIF fines, we will also have a demo at the end of this webinar. So hopefully that answers all of those questions. We have one other question, which I know that we're going to be getting into how to dispute AP deductions here in a second. So if you want to if you want to think about this while we're going over that, but we see a lot of responses from Walmart on the deduction front, with Walmart ignoring the signed BOL as proof of quantity shipped and claiming that they need confirmation form receipt from DC, even in a collect shipping situation. Do you have any insight into that, Stacey?
That is incorrect for Walmart to do. So I would very much recommend that you push back on that. So you do have the ability to kind of fight, even if Walmart kind of denies the dispute or they kind of send it back in Walmart research and all that good stuff. I would fight that pretty strongly. Walmart's own documentation states that if you are a collect supplier, a signed BOL should be sufficient. So I would fight that pretty heavily. Just kind of other things to think about that we've seen work in case you're not getting the feedback that you need. Number one, you can always bring that up with your buyer. Now, the caveat I always give is the buyer is a little bit out of the loop or out of the process when it comes to kind of the finance, this particular side of financing. So they may not necessarily know the right thing, but never be afraid to loop in your buyer, especially when you're in the right. Second thing to think about, EBS is Walmart's Enterprise Business Solutions team. They're actually Walmart's internal finance team. And I think, Melody, we can share that contact information in the chat. EBS is a really great resource if, again, you're not getting the information that you need. They can really kind of override whatever kind of the auditing party is saying. And then another kind of idea that I have is we've also seen some success with sharing like delivery receipts. So you can pull warehouse level delivery receipts out of DSS by PO. Now, Walmart's kind of gold standard for proof if your collect is a BOL and if your prepaid is a POD, but it never hurts to provide additional proof if you have that available. So yeah, I would say, I would start with EBS. Then I would kind of loop in, like, send in your delivery receipt information, and then buyer is kind of the last line of defense. And one thing for you guys to know as well, in case you're maybe not as familiar with the process. So this used to be a Walmart internal process, them reviewing deduction disputes, but they have since outsourced this to Genpact and a Genpact team based in India. And so, we have seen in the last probably 6 months, a huge volume of deduction disputes going over through APDP to Genpact. And so, they are taking a little bit slower to get through deductions disputing. And also you're just, as they scale up teams, they're not going to be as familiar with the process and things like that. So I would really recommend redisputing that because you're definitely in the right for that particular scenario. But great question. And hopefully that helps. And Melody, do we have a question?
Sorry, I was just giving you a thumbs up. Hopefully that did. We have quite a few other questions, but I'm going to let you get through this section and then I can pepper them at you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so, and that's honestly the perfect segue for us to get into disputing Walmart AP deductions. So again, guys, this is a little bit more of a surface level because we're trying to cover a lot within the span of an hour. So I really, really recommend checking out the other supplier wiki resources. And if not, Melody and we share our contact information at the end, and we are more than happy to kind of set up some time with you guys. If not with us, then with our, amazing customer support and customer success teams, and they'll be able to kind of point you in the right direction. But yeah, so when you are looking, again, within the world of AP deduction, so again, this is when Walmart is short paying you on a specific invoice. These are kind of the different tools that are available to you in Retail Link. If you're kind of newer to this, really recommend that you get familiar with these different apps. So when you go into Retail Link, you'll see kind of an apps tab at the very top. You can search for these. You should be able to find them. If not, your Retail Link admin should be able to grant access for you. And essentially, these are kind of the three main applications that we would really recommend you, again, get familiar with. So first one is the accounting scorecard. This is kind of a lesser known one, but I think it's a really great temperature check when you're looking at your invoices. It looks at invoice accuracy as well as EDI accuracy. And this is really, really helpful, especially when you're looking at like allowance and pricing issues. Making sure that, you know, whatever you are sending over as an invoice to Walmart matches what Walmart is expecting to receive and see. So a lot of times if we're working with teams that have a really high rate of, again, allowance or pricing issues in their deductions, we kind of point them in the accounting scorecard first. So make sure that when you're invoicing Walmart, the allowances that you're sending over match whatever is on your supplier agreement. And, you know, if you don't know where your supplier agreement is, you can actually access it within Retail Link. If you go to the top right portion of your screen, you'll see a little user profile icon. Click on that, you'll be able to see like my agreements, and then you'll be able to find all of your live agreements there. So one thing to think about, if you have multiple vendor numbers, if you have multiple kind of supplier numbers, so 9-digit numbers, making sure that, you know, whatever you're sending to those departments and invoicing for are going to match the terms that are in your supplier agreement. So accounting scorecard is a really, really good tool. APIS or APIS, that's what I mentioned earlier just now. That stands for the Accounts Payable Inquiry System. So this is kind of Walmart's almost like book of business in terms of like your numbers. So you can see what you've invoiced, you can see all of the claims and the deductions that have come through. So APIS is always a good place to start. Again, we've got a lot of resources online for you. We walk through APIS. So if you want to see what that looks like, you can check out some of our other webinars. And then APDP, again, is the actual dispute portal. So APIS is where you go in to see what your payments are and if you've got a deduction, and then you go into APDP if you think that deduction that you received was invalid, and then you have to go and fight that particular deduction. So what do you need to actually dispute an AP deduction? Just so you guys know, there are about 75 different AP deduction codes from Walmart. And so, you know, as a general rule, the documentation that you need to fight each different code is really going to depend on the type of code that you need. So for example, if it's a pricing related deduction, you're probably going to need your supplier agreement or an email from your buyer. If it's a shortage related deduction, like we talked about earlier, you're going to need that BOL or POD. Generally speaking, these are kind of the types of information that you need. Again, the proof of delivery, the bill of lading, invoice, PO, supplier agreement. But, you know, again, your mileage may vary. So you know, we do have a free deductions ebook available, and I think Melody can probably link it in the chat, where we will show you those 75 different Walmart codes and kind of what documentation you need for every single code that you receive. So this is just a general rule, but if you want that free ebook, you can just download it, and then you'll be able to see kind of by code what the different documents are. And I'll shamelessly plug Melody and her team. This is not information that exists in Retail Link. Melody's team went out and did the research and talked to a bunch of suppliers and Walmart folks to get this information. So this is like kind of a Supply Pike exclusive, but we give it to you guys for free. So, and we love being able to do that. So other things that I won't read off from this just in the interest of time, but when you go into APDP itself, in addition to providing the proof documentation, you also need to provide some kind of, you know, basic PO level information so they know how to research it on their side. So things you're going to need, things like your claim date, your claim number, the dispute type. Is it store level? Is it warehouse level? Your claim code. So, you know, is it a shortage code, a pricing code, a returns code? Your disputed amount, how much are you actually trying to go after? You know, is it a partially invalid claim? Is it a completely invalid claim? And then other things are like your supplier number, purchase number, freight carrier, and things like that. Location. So it's a lot of information that Walmart needs, even though they've taken the money first, but that's fine. But, you know, again, location information. So what specific store or DC did this come from? Shipping method, was it prepaid or collect? And then usually Walmart expects some type of description when you're sending in a dispute. So basically, hey, this is a shortage related claim. We disagree because we did ship in full, and here's our attached POD or whatever it is. Generally speaking, we found in our experience, Genpact, the ones that are reviewing the claims, they don't actually read the description in the first go around, which is why we really, you know, don't really recommend that you guys spend, you know, a lot of time writing like a 3-paragraph summary. Literally, you can just say like shipped in full POD attached. That's sufficient. If they do push it back to you guys, so they disagree and they need more information, then you can kind of give them a longer, description and kind of give them additional proof information and all of that good stuff. But I wouldn't worry about spending too much time kind of on your first go around, because 90% of the time they're not going to read it. So one thing to kind of call out is that, obviously the APDP dispute process, they have streamlined it quite a bit compared to how it used to be. So there used to be a completely separate portal. But I think kind of the painful part for a lot of folks is just making sure that you have all of this information easily available, because you can get a dispute for every invoice and PO that you send over. So it can get to a point where you're kind of having to work through 20, 30, 40 a week, sometimes more, just depending on how big you are. So I really, really recommend, and you'll hear us say this a lot at Supply Pike, document everything, figure out a really, really good system, because if not, like, can you get this information? Sure. But my gosh, is it painful to get? I know I used to do this. So if you can create a system where you have this information more easily available, it's going to help you kind of on the back end. So other kind of good information to include are things like shipping documents. I won't wax poetic on this. You guys know, if you're collect, really, you need to provide that bill of lading. And if you're prepaid, you need to be able to provide that proof of delivery or the drop trailer stamp. So we'll be sharing this presentation with you guys, as Melody said earlier. So, don't worry about having to take notes or anything like that. You will have this available to you later. Okay. So in addition to that, you'll also need your invoice. It's not completely necessary, because technically Walmart should already have a copy of this as well as their PO, but they like to have it there just so that their kind of agents are able to look at everything in one place. And then, again, you can compare the quantities and the costs and the allowances easily to make sure that, if this is not valid, it's very easily apparent that it's not valid. So I'm going to kind of zoom through these just because I want to make sure that I have enough time for the other types of deductions or compliance fines. But again, these are just other types of proof documentation. I would really recommend downloading that ebook if you don't already have it, because it's going to cover a lot of this information. And again, tell you by code what information you need to provide. So you're not, trying to, attach 40 different documents per dispute. So Okay, so moving on to disputing OTIF fines. So again, this is going to fall under the compliance category, and I'll kind of give you guys a little bit of a caveat. You'll see that we have a disputing OTIF fines with your buyer and disputing OTIF fines through high radius. So Walmart has not really very clearly, explicitly said how they want suppliers to dispute OTIF fines. They have given the avenue of utilizing high radius, which we'll talk about in a second. But I know that they are still allowing buyers to waive OTIF fines as well. So we prefer to kind of give you guys the whole gamut of information, and then you guys can kind of utilize whatever works best for the situation that you're in. So again, kind of what I mentioned here, they did update their OTIF FAQ in January of last year. Of course, they didn't publish that, they didn't announce it anywhere, but it has been updated. We keep an eye on that, of course, at Supply Pike, so we're aware of it. But kind of the big change is that before, for OTIF fines, you'd have to go to your buyer before they got invoiced, and then your buyer could waive that. And then once it was invoiced, the generally, accepted idea was that you wouldn't be able to touch that OTIF fine anymore. So it's really important to get ahead of it being invoiced. But now, as I mentioned, they do allow you to dispute it after it is invoiced through high radius. So again, you can do both options. You can go through your buyer to get it waived before it's invoiced, but once it's invoiced, you do have the ability to go after it in high radius. So with regards to actually talking to your buyer, I probably am not going to say anything that is, going to surprise anyone, but essentially you want to make sure that if you're going to ask your buyer to get a fine waived, make sure you have really, really strong documentation in place. We really recommend trying to avoid kind of onesie twosieing it with your buyer. So not necessarily saying like, this PO this week and this PO next week, because you can actually see your projected fines in the OTIF scorecard on Retail Link. We recommend trying to wait basically until the entire month is through so that you can deliver a packet to your buyer to say like, hey, these are all of the POs that I'm potentially susceptible for a fine for this month. Here's all of our documentation for it. Can you go ahead and get that waived? So as you guys can kind of see here, basically, you'll get a projected fine. If possible, you want to communicate with your buyer before that fine is invoiced. If that buyer approves what you're requesting, basically they'll waive the fine and you'll never see it get invoiced in high radius. If they don't approve you waiving that fine, then it will be issued and then you can fight that fine in high radius. So kind of the key things to know about is Walmart is usually about, so the OTIF window, how it looks like is basically you have kind of the month for the OTIF fines to accumulate. As you guys probably know, OTIF is about 2 weeks behind at all times. So really, let's just say we're about halfway through February. The month of January is about to close for Walmart OTIF. Once that closes, so probably at end of this week, then you'll have the end of this week until the end of February, which is when the fines get invoiced to talk to your buyer. So it is a bit of a challenge because essentially you have about 2 weeks to review all of the projected fines, research, gather proof documentation, start a conversation with your buyer, and then get your buyer to approve the waive in order for the fine to not get invoiced. So just so you guys are aware that is kind of the process now. So again, you'll want to have the PO numbers that you want to dispute, any supporting documentation, any sort of dispute reasoning, and then also the amount that is being requested to be waived from the fines. So just so you guys know too, for this particular process, I do believe that there is actually a dollar threshold. So if it's under a certain amount, the buyer can choose to waive that kind of at their discretion. If it is above a certain threshold, then they actually have to involve their bosses. So I think it only goes up to the DMM level. But again, as you guys, I'm sure can imagine, it's a really tight timeline for you guys to research, gather proof, reach out to the buyer, and if it's over a certain amount, get them to approve and then get the DMM to approve before the fine even gets, invoiced. So just be aware of that. Again, broken record, you'll hear me say this a lot, but it's really, really important to make sure that you are documenting like crazy, because that is going to help you kind of in the long run. Okay, so, let's assume the buyer process did not work out. And in fact, we've heard from some suppliers where their buyers are like, don't even talk to me about it, just use the high radius process. So again, your mileage may vary just depending on the department and the buyer that you're working with. But let's just say, regardless of how you get there, the buyer has not waived the OTIF fine for you and they decide to go ahead and invoice you for that fine, then you do now have a new point of recourse, which is disputing the OTIF fines on high radius. So again, friendly reminder, high radius is a third-party application. So you do have to go and get access to this. You have to request an account. And then once you get that account, then you'll be able to see your OTIF fines, your SWEP fines, and your collect pickup program fines, all within high radius. So just so you guys know, if you don't have access to that today, it will not be on Retail Link. It'll be through another third-party application altogether. Okay, so with that, so I wanted to kind of talk about the different tools that are available for you guys, just because obviously if you're kind of getting into this, you'll need to know where to find the different information. So within Retail Link, you can go to the OTIF scorecard. So if you guys are following along at home or at the office, you should be able to just kind of search in the apps bar for the OTIF scorecard and it should be able to pop up. Just a pro tip for any apps that you guys use, there's a little star icon on the right side. If you click on that, it will favorite the application. And then anytime you log into Retail Link, it'll be available for you on the home page. So the actual OTIF scorecard, it's going to show you all kinds of different information. Again, today is a little bit more surface level. We have a lot of webinars around navigating the OTIF scorecard, but it's going to give you a lot of information around your actual OTIF scores, around your OTIF fines. It can even give you information on like whose accountability the OTIF compliance issues fall into. So for example, Walmart, shockingly, will take accountability for certain types of issues, but then you, the supplier, will be responsible for certain types of issues. So you're only going to get that, 3% fine for supplier accountability issues. So easy examples, if you're a collect supplier, you're only, no matter what, you're going to be responsible for making sure products arrive in full. But from an on-time perspective, if you're a collect supplier, you're really only responsible for routing the PO in a timely manner, and making sure that product is available for pickup when the Walmart carrier arrives. As long as you've kind of checked those two boxes, you should be okay. Even if Walmart's carrier gets your product to their DC, a week late, because you're collect, that falls out of your scope of accountability. So you will not be fined for that. Obviously, if you're prepaid, you're responsible for the freight portion, you will be fined. So really, again, kind of understanding what your accountability is, so you know how to either determine validity of the fines or go back and fight those fines. But yeah, so from there, let's just say you've gotten your OTIF score and you've gotten your OTIF fine and you're like, hold on, I don't think this is valid. I want to fight this. You can then kind of utilize HighRadius to actually dispute these fines. And I will kind of give you guys a very brief walkthrough on what HighRadius looks like. So what you can expect and how you can actually go after these fines. So essentially, you can dispute both OTIF fines and SQEP fines in HighRadius utilizing the dispute button. So when you log in, you'll see the dispute button on the top left-hand side. Fines are going to be disputed in a 1-month batch, so just be aware of that. And also, I think a key thing to note is that you have a 13-month window to dispute invoiced fines. So with AP-related deductions, you can go back up to 2 years for Walmart. And then with OTIF and SQEP fines, you can go back 13 months to fight those particular fines.
Hey, Stacey, we do have one question that I figured we could talk about right now. So how do you know about the fines, the OTIF fines, before you were invoiced so that you can contact the buyer first?
Yeah, that is a very good question. I am going to see if I have an OTIF. Oh, I don't have a screenshot of the OTIF scorecard. Okay, so when you log in, if you go to the OTIF scorecard, kind of in the top left-hand portion of the page, you're going to see basically a few different icons. One of them is going to be around your scores. So that's where you can see the percentage. And then one of them is going to have, I think it's like dollar signs or something like that. And that will actually be the fines page. So you want to navigate to the fines page. And then within the fines page, and again, there's a webinar on this, so there are screenshots if this is not very helpful. But within the fines page, then again, top left-hand side, basically you can toggle between invoiced fines and projected fines. So invoiced fines, obviously whatever has been invoiced, and you can go look at that and say, again, valid, not valid, I want to fight that, or I'm good. And then if you navigate and toggle to the projected fines, that will show you what Walmart is projecting to fine you on. So OTIF scorecard, fines page, projected fines, and you should be able to see a list of POs. Now, one reason why we recommend waiting for the month to close is because that projected fines page will change because kind of what is happening is Walmart, let's just say PO 12345 was supposed to arrive on X date. We all know receiving at the DC is opportunities galore. So, if you check on the MABD itself, it may not show as arrived. And so you'll have a projected fine, but maybe a week later, it actually does get received into the DC. It's received in full, that projected fine will go away. So really, we recommend waiting until the OTIF month closes. So kind of like that example that I gave. And we have an OTIF calendar. I think we just launched it, right, Mel? The fiscal FYE 24 calendar. And so, yeah, so that's just been put on our calendar when the OTIF month closes and when you get fined for those different OTIF months. This is following Walmart's calendar, so you can kind of track that. So it's something that you need to be checking. And if you're not looking at your OTIF scores, you need to be looking at it at the very least monthly. I really recommend checking in bi-weekly, weekly if you can. So great question. Okay, yeah, so high radius, you can dispute these fines. So once you find them, you can go like, don't agree with them, I want to fight these. You can hit dispute. Again, you have that 13-month window to go after it. And basically, once you submit that fine, or once you submit the dispute, you will basically have to wait for them to approve it, and then they will pay you back. And you can see that payback in high radius as well. So I will say a couple things to note. Again, the OTIF fine is, or the OTIF process is much less defined than the AP dispute process, unfortunately. Walmart recommends, which this is verbatim from them, screenshots, documentation, research, like, well, yeah, not super helpful. The communication from all partners. Now, I will say in our experience, what we have seen from the Walmart side is that they basically say that they don't need BOLs, they don't need PODs. They essentially will determine the validity of the OTIF fine based on their own information, which feels a little conflict of interest. But, you know, that is kind of the official line that they're taking. Now, obviously, we recommend wherever you can going ahead and giving that documentation, because it's never going to hurt you. You know, if you have an in full fine and you can show, you know, again, a signed POD or signed BOL, like, go ahead and do that. But just so you know, from Walmart's end, they're basically saying they're only evaluating based on, you know, the information that they can pull from their own systems. So again, not as clearly defined as AP deductions, but again, our tack and our take on this is really go after it and send as much documentation as you can. It's not going to hurt you. So just so you guys know. So yeah, this is kind of the information that high radius requires. So it's going to be your 6-digit supplier number, the host PO numbers that you're disputing, any of the item numbers within that host PO numbers, what is the charge type? So in full, collect ready, prepaid on time, etc. And then the charge amount. So basically how much you're trying to fight with high radius. They also ask for things like MABD because, you know, obviously they're kind of judging your prepaid on time score, for example. And then if you're collect ready, you know, how many cases, you know, what's late routing, so on and so forth. So again, you guys will have access to all this information, but this is kind of the bare bones of what Walmart is expecting anytime you submit a dispute on high radius, either for OTIF or for SQEP. So we wanted to kind of give you guys screenshots of the process just so you have them available. And again, I'm going to zoom through this part a little bit quickly. But basically, when you log into high radius, you're going to go into open bills and closed bills. So just so you guys know the difference, if they have not been paid off or matched with transactions, they're considered open bills. And once they're matched, they're considered closed bills. You can dispute both. So you're going to go there. Basically, depending on kind of which tab you're in, you're going to see a list of the different charges that you've received. And basically, you're going to select whatever it is that you want to dispute. And then from there, you're going to hit the dispute button in the kind of middle of the screen. And again, you're going to fill in all of that information that we talked about. So what is your dispute reason? What are you trying to dispute? And what are comments if available? And then you can also upload your attachments there. So PODs, BOLs, emails from the buyer, supplier agreements, whatever it is, that is where you'll fill that out. From there, you can hit the save button. Oh, and then after that, you know, you're going to have to kind of fill out your invoice number, open amount, all that good stuff. And then hit the save button, and then that will actually send that over to high radius. And then once you've submitted that dispute, basically how you can kind of check in to see where it is, so you navigate to the disputes tab, and you'll be able to kind of see that information. And, you know, either it'll be approved or denied, or they'll kick it back to you for additional comments. And then you can kind of track it along that way. So I'm going to spend the last kind of 4 or 5 minutes talking about a couple of different examples that we've seen kind of in the wild, just so you guys know, like, hey, this is a valid situation, which I should try and go fight, or, oh, other suppliers are kind of going through this. So examples of kind of invalid fines are situations where DCs are being full, or DCs are full for prepaid delivery. If Walmart missed the pickup for collect orders, if there are any discrepancies in Walmart's internal systems, unpredictable inclement weather, and for these, you want to make sure that you're communicating any issues with the Walmart team as they come up. So one thing that I didn't mention I should have kind of during the disputing with your buyer process is, while you don't necessarily want to dispute the OTIF fines onesie twosie with your buyer, it is important to let them know if things are going, like if you plan on disputing things later on. So a really good example of that is, let's just say, so we hear from our collect suppliers a lot, where, they route the orders, the product is ready, either the Walmart truck misses pickup consistently, or maybe the supply, if you're LTL and the truck that's coming before, your load is full and they're not able to get all your product in, so they only pick up a partial load, things like that. That is out of your control. And you want to make sure, number one, that you're submitting tickets in the transportation portal if you're not already, and you have to do that for every instance. So anytime Walmart is late to pick up, every single day they're late for a load, you need to submit a transportation portal ticket every day that they're late. Or if you have a situation again where the truck is full and they aren't able to pick up your load, either completely or at all, you want to submit a transportation portal ticket for that and let your buyer know, so that kind of when you get to the end of the month, essentially you never want to surprise your buyer. You don't want to be like, everything's great, buyer, and then kind of at the end of the month, like, surprise, we need you to waive a $25,000 fine. They should know that, hey, this scenario continues to happen. We are submitting tickets through transportation portal. So don't be surprised if, at the end of the month, we're going to ask you to waive this fine because it's out of our control. As far as inclement weather goes, I will say this, your mileage will vary depending on your buyer. Shocker. We have seen some buyers, obviously we have like huge cold fronts, or like Northwest Arkansas was like a winter wonderland for a week last week. Some buyers will be like, hey, I get it, and I'm not going to hold you responsible for that. There are some buyers that are not going to be as forgiving. So just give you guys a heads up there that, if your buyer is not willing to kind of waive those types of fines, then you can always dispute them with high radius. You won't I can't guarantee that you'll win them. We have seen, I think the big challenge that we've seen with OTIF fines is with AP deductions. It's fairly cut and dry, as long as you have the proof, you'll get your money back. With OTIF, it really depends on your buyer, and it really depends on who's reviewing the fine. So again, never hurts to have more proof than less. But just so you guys know that it's not going to be, if you're doing AP deductions and now you've taken over OTIF, it's not going to be as cut and dry. Now we have seen, just as a general comment, OTIF fine, disputes, we have seen approval rates go up pretty significantly over the last 6 months. So it's not kind of a guaranteed formula, but just as a general trend, like I said, we kind of work with over 400 companies today. As a general trend, we're seeing more and more approvals on high radius over the last 6 months. So kind of light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully, for there. Anytime you're trying to dispute OTIF chargebacks, if it's a Walmart related issue, documentation is key, making sure you're providing communication along the way, kind of like what we talked about. If there are extenuating circumstances, like what we talked about with the weather, documentation, kind of broken record here, but any sort of proof that you can provide to your buyer to let them know, like, hey, these roads were literally impassable. So, okay, kind of try and grant us some leeway there. Yeah. And then I think, that's kind of all I wanted to cover today, just in the interest of time, Melody. I know it looks like our chat is popping in our Q&A, so.
Yeah, I'm so happy with all the engagement we're getting today. I'm loving it. I love it whenever you guys ask questions. Okay. Are you ready, Stacy?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Right. Do prepaid customers get supplier ship point charge in OTIF? Get a supplier ship
Good
point.
question. The answer to that is no. So in OTIF, supplier ship point, that is going to be a collect supplier thing. And basically supplier ship point is, was the product staged and ready for pickup by the time the Walmart carrier showed up? So if you're prepaid, you should not get a supplier ship point charge. Great question.
Super helpful. Thank you. Okay. We disputed some July invoices that were deducted in full and have not received payments. They are
Mm,
currently showing in Walmart research, but
mhm.
have since July 2022. Oh,
Yes.
any
Yeah. So, okay. So I will say, I kind of mentioned earlier in the webinar that it is taking a little bit longer for Walmart's Genpack team to get through reviewing the deduction disputes. On average, just so you guys again have the context, and this is on average, we see our suppliers that work with SupplyPike, they will get essentially from the time they dispute to the time they get some sort of status, it's about 51 days. And then kind of 7 days to get paid if you do get approved. So about 2 months. But that said, again, it is kind of an average. So we do see some teams get auto approved and they can get the answer within 24 hours. And we have also seen teams have to wait 4 or 5 months. Now, I will say from July, that seems kind of extreme. That seems like 7 or 8 months is a bit long. I would really recommend reaching out to EBS and send them. So when you submit the dispute on APDP, you should get a dispute ID. I would recommend sending that ID over to EBS, and they can actually let you know how far, they can let you know how long their backlog is, and they can also let you know how far behind you are. We also have kind of worked on behalf of our clients to get that information, and can even sometimes prioritize specific claims. So EBS is going to be your best bet there.
And Michael said in the chat that we have actually just gotten Genpact on Zoom recently. They are telling us that they are 5 months behind, which is not,
Oh,
especially with how many suppliers are switching over from settlement to individual disputing in
yes.
Walmart's news. And if you guys haven't heard about that, I will send a, a link to a webinar that we did on that latest announcement. Everyone's going to have to move off of settlement in May. So I think that the problem is just going to get worse, which is
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of to give context and color to what Melody is saying. So again, a lot of suppliers, about, I think, Mel, I think it's 15-20% of suppliers were on settlement before, and now are having to move to individual disputing. And just so you guys have the context, everyone that's going through individual disputing will have to go through APDP now. So imagine 20% of Walmart suppliers that weren't using APDP now using APDP to send individual disputes. Like the volume of deduction disputes that are going over to Genpact is crazy, I'm sure. And so, like Melody said, I completely agree. I do anticipate that we're going to see slowdowns, at least for a little bit, while Walmart kind of ramps up their team on the Genpact side. So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun few months for us.
really great. Okay, so these were pre-submitted questions, so I do want to get them out of the way really quick. What would be the best way to dispute charges received in the SQEP portal?
Yeah, great question. So I would just follow the this process that we talked about here. So when you go into high radius and you again click on the open bills or closed bills, and you get that list of chargebacks, they will kind of list out if it is a SQEP fine or an OTIF fine, and you will be able to kind of fight both of them using high radius. So just follow this process, select whatever it is you want to dispute, and then kind of fill out all the information and then submit that. I will say one thing to note with SQEP, which we didn't talk about today, but we have SQEP webinar, which I really recommend checking out, is there is kind of a partner app to SQEP. So there's a SQEP scorecard, just so you guys know. It looks very similar to the OTIF scorecard, but obviously is for SQEP related charges. But there's also a sister app to SQEP scorecard. Are there enough apps yet, guys? And it's called Fix It. And Fix It will actually, Walmart will actually show pictures, because again, remember how we talked about SQUEP was around like labeling and box quality and pallet quality and things like that. So the DC is supposed to send you guys pictures. So if you get hit with a SQUEP fine, you can go into the Fix It app and look at pictures and see proof of that. I really, really recommend looking at Fix It, because we have heard many scenarios where suppliers are getting pictures of product that isn't even theirs. So they're getting hit with fines on products that don't belong to them. So I really recommend getting familiar with Fix It. And as Melody said, you know, we will be doing a SQUEP webinar this afternoon. Please come for that. And then also check out our other SQUEP resources, because it's, just so you guys know, Walmart is really investing a lot of money into SQUEP this year. And so, you know, they rolled it out last year. We saw, I thought this stat was insane. 97% of suppliers that we work with received a SQUEP fine. And for about a third of them, their SQUEP fine was higher than their OTIF fine last year. And I think that that's going to continue. So really encourage you guys, if you're not in the know about SQUEP, or maybe you've heard about it, but you're like, it's a problem for later me, that time has arrived. I really recommend getting on top of it quickly, because it's going to be a thing for 2023.
I appreciate all that. I did send earlier a recording of the SQUEP webinar that we have that talks about what SQUEP is and a high level of how you can dispute it. But then I also just sent another recording of the live event we did with Ken Letter from GNC, who he talked about how to go and dispute SQUEP fines. So that one will be really helpful for you guys who are having a couple of questions around that. One last question on SQUEP, just one of our pre-submitted ones. Is there a timeline of when SQUEP charges should be disputed? If you can cover that again real quick.
Yes, great question. So same time frame as OTIF, you're going to have up to 13 months, so 13-month window to go back and go after SQUEP fines. So, you know, again, it's going to be done in a monthly batch, but you have up to 13 months to do it. But that is kind of rolling. So make sure that you're going after, I would recommend going after the later ones first, to make sure that you don't lose the opportunity to go after that. So 13-month window.
All right, I guess we have time for one more. All right.
Okay.
Do you want one on collect appointments or another one on SQUEP?
Let's maybe do SQUEP, just because, you know, that's, I think, a hot topic.
Okay, so if a ticket is assigned for non-compliance case labels, for instance, once you've provided your action plan and future dates of compliance, do you receive additional fines if any cases are received before that date you provided?
Yes, you do. You will continue to receive fines for that, unfortunately. Now you can certainly try and fight those fines. So the supplier is probably talking about, just so you guys know, when you do get a SQUEP fine, part of that process within Fix It is they recommend submitting what they call a CAP, or a corrective action plan. And basically, you know, you have to tell them, this is what we're going to do, this is when we're going to fix it by, so on and so forth. And then Walmart has to basically approve your CAP. And so, yes, you will continue to receive fines, because to them, it's still out of compliance. Good question on, you know, I think it's worthy to try and fight it, because obviously you kind of have to let the cases flow through the system, you know, and you need time to like rebuild your cases or whatever it is, but you can try to fight those fines, but I would expect that you will continue to get those fines. And one other pro tip for you guys as well, I have heard through the grapevine again, and if OTIF is undefined, SQUEP is even more undefined right now because it's so new for Walmart. But I've heard from a few different Walmart sources that if you don't submit your CAP, they will not even review your SQUEP like fine disputes. So the CAP is not mandatory per se, but you can't reverse SQUEP fines if you're not submitting CAPs. So again, it's not in their official documentation, because, you know, Walmart documentation, but I have heard that. So, you know, best practice, if you can, again, equip yourself as much as you can. I would submit those CAPs if you want to try and fight those SQUEP fines. But yeah, great question.
Okay, I'm going to try to sneak one more in there. So
Yeah.
sorry. All right, let's do this. Okay, so an issue that we have is the DC is receiving 2 POs delivered on the same less than truckload truck
Okay.
on one PO Nova, and then
I know
denying
where this is going.
the second PO, and then making the second PO short. Any recommendations here?
Yeah, so overages and shortages kind of within the same thing, very, very common. Kind of interesting because technically as part of SQEP, they can actually fine you for an overage now. Love that for us. But what we recommend is basically wherever you can, try and match that up and see if it nets itself out. If not, what we've seen other suppliers do is they will fight the shortage. So they'll submit a shortage dispute on APDP, and then they will invoice for the overage. So a couple of different methods you can use. So I would first see if if you invoice for the overage and they pay it, does it net out? And if not, then dispute the shortage and invoice for the overage. And then just so you guys know too, we do support overages as well as supply pike. So if that's something that you guys are curious about, that's something that we can help recover revenue for you guys.
A very new thing that we just started doing. So would
Yes.
love to show you guys how we can help with that. I'm also going to send a link to an upcoming webinar that we have on shortages and overages. That's going to be at the end of February. So if you want to join us on that, we can show you how you can also pull an overage report in Retail Link and do all of that fun stuff. So awesome. That we are a little over time. I appreciate everyone who stayed on. That is our contact information. Please feel free to email us or find us at supplypike.com. We'd love to talk to you guys. Let me send this link real quick on overages. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. I'm so sorry that we are over time. Oh, I got another question. Can you bill for overages? Yes, you can. Please join that webinar that I just sent. We can show you how to bill for overages, how to pull the report, all of that stuff. Or if you want SupplyPike to handle it for you, we can also help with that. So yeah, thank you everyone. We'll now jump into our quick sneak peek product preview of OTIF Radar, how we can help you guys recover money for OTIF fines. If this is where you leave us, thank you again. But if not, please join us for a quick little demo.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel. And thank you guys as well for hanging out with us. Broken record here, but we really are, as you guys hopefully can tell, very passionate about supporting suppliers. I'm a recovering supplier myself. So if there is anything that we can help with, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to provide guidance, point you in the right direction, hop on a Zoom call if we need to. But yeah, so really quickly, a quick sneak peek of OTIF Radar. So this is one of the applications that we have built at SupplyPike, and this is supporting compliance fines. So obviously I have a demo account up, a lot of old data in here, just as an example. But basically, what we do, as I mentioned earlier, is we have direct integrations with retailer portals. So with OTIF Radar, we are pulling information out of Retail Link. And for this particular app, we're actually pulling information out of like 7 different apps within Retail Link. So DSS, OTIF scorecard, transportation portal, request for routing, all of that good stuff automatically pulled for you here. So kind of the beauty of OTIF Radar, obviously, in addition to kind of getting you information in a much more legible format than Walmart, is we're pulling and combining all of the information for you so that you're not having to go into 7 different apps and like pivot table, the heck out of an Excel sheet. We'll pull all this information out for you. We'll even kind of show you your projected fines. We'll show you what you've been fined for, and all of that good stuff. I think kind of one of the most powerful parts of OTIF Radar is, obviously kind of the general view is really nice to have, but in addition to just a general overview of your OTIF scorecard, we actually provide different viewpoints for you to look at your supply chain. So, knowing that you weren't completely in full or on time is one thing, but really being able to dig down into why wasn't I on time? Who should I be talking to if I wasn't on time? I think is, 5 times more powerful. So you can see here, for example, we give you guys viewpoints of your score by carrier, by points of origin. So if you have multiple ship points, you can even kind of drill down into which ship point is causing you a lot of fines. any specific departments, any specific Walmart DCs that are having receiving issues. Are there any items that have disproportionately high OTIF fines, your vendor numbers? You can even build obviously your own ad hoc segments. So just for the purposes of today, I'll hop into the carriers just as an example. But you can see here, so this is not a view you could get in Retail Link today, but we will actually take a look at all of your data and kind of stitch it together with a particular carrier. And we can tell you what that carrier's on-time fine is, and if they, got a fine and how much that fine is. So, it's really, really powerful to be able to kind of, in 2 clicks go, oh, okay, I need to go talk to Howell's Motor Freight Company because they are responsible for, X dollars in fines for me. We'll also you can click onto the carriers. We even give you carrier scorecards so you can see their performance over time. How much have they costed you for the last year or quarter or whatever it is? Hey, if you put a certain plan in place for them, have they improved or have they gotten worse? So we've worked with teams that will actually use this data, kind of export this information, send it out to their carriers, show them all the POs that they're responsible for, and either pass that fine on or even negotiate better rates for later on. So, actual impactful information, that not only helps you get paid, but it helps you get better as well. So really, really powerful stuff. And then last bit that I'm going to show you guys, again, just for the purposes of the sneak peek today. So in addition to kind of that deep dive analysis page where you can get to the root cause of issues, we also give you the tactical side, which actually allows you to kind of select whichever POs that you want to go and dispute. Of course, we have super powerful filtering and sorting. We'll be able to get through all of that today in this 5 minutes, but let's just say you've kind of gotten down to the POs where you're like, yeah, I know these are not valid. I want to go ahead and fight them. You can select all of them and we will automatically create that buyer dispute packet, or we can automatically submit it to you for you on HighRadius. And then kind of last cool thing that I'll point out for you guys, I know I talked a lot about the documentation piece. So just so you guys know, for all of our applications, we've got about 100 different carrier and 3PL integrations. So UPS, FedEx, CH Robinson, all that good stuff, where we will automatically pull proofs of delivery and bills of lading for you and attach them to the specific PO. So let's just say, again, in our example, you want to go after these 6 POs, you select them all. When you hit that create button, it's automatically going to attach those files for you. So you don't even have to go and search and download every single PO. We will pull all of that, stitch it together. So when you're ready to go talk to your buyer, it's 2 clicks, select the POs, download the documents, or if you need to find it on HighRadius, same situation, select the POs, hit submit to or send to HighRadius, and we'll send it over and track it for you. So yeah, we've helped our suppliers win back about $500 million from Walmart in the last 2 years alone. So a lot of real dollar impact. What we do here at Supply Pike, we really believe in the little guy. So if we can help you guys, please let us know. Just so you guys know too, we do offer a completely free business analysis. So we'll actually pull your data into the application. Obviously this is all kind of demo data, doesn't really mean anything, but it is really powerful to see your data in the application and be able to very quickly pinpoint, what you should be focusing on, who you should be talking to, actions you should take. And we found that this really helps free up our suppliers team's time to go after strategic initiatives and root causing and things that are not just staring at Retail Link for hours on end. So yeah, that's kind of all I've got today. Hopefully, again, this was helpful. If you guys have any other questions, more than welcome to reach out to Melody and myself. And hopefully we will see you guys at the SQUEP webinar this afternoon.
Yeah, hopefully you guys join us. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Stacy. Really appreciate all of the time you spend with us.
I love it.
But thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, guys.